Got it.
All right. They added that to Zoom. All right, so real quick, we're going to cover some WordPress news and events. And again, for the sake of time, I won't spend a lot of time on these, but really the big one coming up is WordCamp US. This last time I looked at the site, there was, I don't think there's a picture or a logo. So it's, since last month, they've really beefed up the site a lot. There's a lot more information there. So for people who don't know, or if you've never attended WordCamp in person, again, unfortunately right now, I don't think there's any of them going on in person. It's a wonderful event to attend in person. But the good thing, one of the good things from the times we live in right now is that you can sample these WordCamps where normally you'd have to fly out to some place and attend them. So WordCamp US, as the name implies, this is the really the big conference in the United States for WordPress. So there's a wide variety of speakers and topics. And again, this year they're doing it all in one day. It used to be over several days that they would do this. So again, register, it's free. That's the other nice thing too right now. It's free to attend. There's a link to it, and surprise, surprise, we actually have one of our own. Our own Peter is one of the speakers at WordCamp US. So Peter, you want to talk just a little bit about your topic that you're doing about the
Yeah, and I'm gonna show a little bit of this real quick when we talk about tools. And
okay, all right. Do you want to go on?
But that is it's the future of learn.wordpress.org, and then how learner achievements can not only help the learner of WordPress, but even be used by people who are hiring people to see what they're doing. For us, the reason I was talking about it as a co-organizer of a meetup, and how Learn can grow and be supportive of what we're doing. So yeah, that's I got involved in the WordPress contributor world, and that's where I landed under Learn. So
very exciting. One of our own representing Hartford WordPress there.
Yep.
So very cool though. So if you get a chance to check them out live, October 1st, it's a Friday, I think, right? October 1st.
You think I'd know?
Yeah, I think it is. I'm in my calendar. October 1st, Friday, October 1st.
It is
4:45 Eastern. So again, register for it, and if you can, show Peter some support by attending it live.
Should be awesome.
All right, and so let me hand it. Speaking of Peter, let me hand it over. Tool and plugin spotlight.
Good. Yeah. So real quick, let me just share. All righty. So right. So here's I think, can you see the WordCamp screen right there?
Yep.
Great. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. But the thing that I want to point yet at, the tool that I think might be kind of underutilized in a lot of ways, is actually WordPress.org. And under WordPress.org, we have, we're used to going in under plugins. But one of the things that you can do is register and get an account at WordPress.org, and you can start tying things to that. And this is a great way to if you're not already, and I don't know how many, I'd be curious how many people might already be using this. But once you're in WordPress.org, then you've got you've got your profile as you earn, as you contribute, and then what's going to happen under Learn, and Learn is its own section here. I'll show you real quick, but there's going to be, the whole idea is there are going to be achievement badges, and as you move through some learning courses and things like that, you can get badges. And what we'd really love people to do is to spend time in there looking at Learn. Learn is a place where you can go through workshops and lesson plans, but there's also, again, all the things that we're used to, but then the little benefits that you might not know that are there. So for example, under plugins, when you're looking at plugins, and this is kind of a weird part about this where it's not initially, but you could set up, as you go and create favorites in for plugins under WordPress.org, you can kind of keep track. You can keep track of the ones that are your favorites, and you could actually, and I'll show you this later when we open up to work on the site, where you could call these favorites up, or you can look at my favorites if you happen to know my WordPress username. Support is a section under WordPress.org that really kind of gets into, some of the methods kind of as an extension of Learn, or Learn is actually an extension of this, where you can get some documentation and all. And a great place to kind of start checking out if you're really if you're into it is in the Get Involved section. This is Make WordPress, and that's where all of the different contributor groups. That's the starting point. I'm involved in accessibility. I was involved in documentation, and now I'm part of training. So, and this is for anybody. This is a great place to find out more information. But by setting up an account, you have the ability again to really keep track of what you're doing in the WordPress world. And I think it's an underutilized tool, because a lot of people, they're in WordPress, they load a plugin, but not realizing that WordPress.org itself is its own tool. What do you think, Ray? Do you have an account? I don't even know if you do.
Well, it's funny. I've had an account forever, but it wasn't until I think you and I started doing these meetups that you showed me the trick of it saving your plugins and the favorites. And I said, like, wow, that's great. So yeah, it saves you trouble, like searching for things and finding them if you have a list of them. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
And I'll show a little bit of that a little later on.
Okay.
So
awesome.
Let me go back to the Zoom screen. Where is it?
I can grab the.
Yeah, grab it. Hit it. There you go.
Right. Oops, let me get out of mode. Sorry. Come on, PowerPoint. One thing I don't like is, let me switch over. Can you see this PowerPoint deck?
Yep.
All right. Let's make it a little bit bigger. I'm not going to do presentation mode because I'll be bouncing back and forth with my browser, so it gets to be a pain.
Yeah, so everybody understands when you put PowerPoint in the presentation, it takes over your Zoom screen. So yeah, that's why we work in edit mode a lot of times.
So tonight's topic is one that I talked about Peter about this before as we were planning. This is actually something that I guess I've wanted to do for quite a while, but it's one of those topics that can be a little bit dry without context. So we'll talk a little bit about the context we're gonna present this in. So but our topic tonight is all about custom fields and custom post types. Again, like I said, this isn't necessarily a beginner topic, something a little bit more intermediate, but I think everyone really should be aware of this, and you can go pretty deep on this as well. So our agenda, as I mentioned before, we're gonna do a real quick recap of the project we've been building over the course of the past several meetups. Last month, we took a break from this project because we really wanted to dive deep into the latest version of WordPress 5.8. So, but we're back to our project again, and that's what tonight's presentation is going to revolve around. So I'm going to cover custom post types. Peter's going to cover custom fields. So our first part is how do you create these things? We'll give some context and terminology. We'll take a pause there for any questions for that first part. And then the second part, which is something that's always not covered as much, is what do I do with it? Now I've got these things, how do I display them and how do I work with them on it so people can see them on the front end? So I'm covering, again, custom post types on the front end, and Peter's gonna be covering custom fields. Then we'll, again, have time for Q&A, and then we'll talk about some final thoughts about what we've covered tonight and also what's coming next on our project. So I'm Ray, again, welcome if I haven't met you before. So I'm one of the co-organizers of the Hartford WordPress meetup. I've been in IT as a career for 25 plus years. Software developer / architect was kind of my position throughout most of those years. Worked for some larger corporations in like the Connecticut area and nationally, I guess internationally somewhat. Been using WordPress, I could update that, five plus years now. I don't know, so maybe a little bit more than that. I'm currently self-employed where I run a WordPress design development company. I live in Newington, Connecticut, married, no kids. We have one crazy cat who, like I said, probably be making noises tonight, and I'm a geek. Peter.
I'm Peter Ingersoll. I live in South Windsor, Connecticut. I have been using technology to support the work I've been doing in marketing communications for a whole bunch of time. I landed on WordPress 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, I'm going to say. That's when I'm going to lock it in. Worked for the Hartford Current, if you're a Connecticut person, for 11 years. Self-taught in just about everything, which, I'm a lifelong learner. I am married with 2 adult children, and now I have 2 new, well, they're becoming cats quite quickly. So that's me.
So that kind of explains our project too. So we'll do a recap of our project. So we're both animal lovers, obviously. And I've also volunteered some of my time currently too for helping out a website for an animal shelter. So that's where this topic kind of came up. So again, if you're joining us midstream, it's okay. We'll catch up real quickly. But basically what we've been doing over the course of several meetups now, this will be part 4, I guess, but I've stopped numbering them, is our goal was to create, sorry, but mute. Our goal was to really create a moderately complex website from scratch. And again, we say moderately complex. I know that sometimes you can find things on YouTube where somebody creates a really simple blog and all that. So there's plenty of tutorials out there for that. What we wanted to do is interactively create something that has a little bit of meat to it. And using some of our own experience working with the nonprofits and working with other clients, we're going to build this thing out over time to be something that really should be a fully functional site for its purpose. But our goal with that too, again, this is kind of the challenge that we're trying to do, is we're trying to only use free plugins, and only use them when needed. So that's, today's topic was a little bit of an interesting one. You'll see some of the compromises we have to make to kind of fit within that. But again, we don't want people going out spending money on plugins if you only use them once, or if there's free things that you can use instead. As we said, each of these has been building upon prior ones. We're also trying to emphasize best practices versus just quick and dirty solutions. And again, there's times where you have to make some compromises, or best practices in the eye of the beholder. But we also want people to participate hands-on as much as possible. So if you've missed the prior ones, you can always go back, watch them on YouTube, hopefully follow along. And if you run into problems while you're trying to follow along, like I said, we're easily reachable through Facebook or through Meetup. And if you watch the very first one too, you don't even need hosting. You can use local by Flywheel to build locally. So again, hopefully anyone can participate and follow along. So the goals of our project is we're building a fictional animal rescue website for a fictional nonprofit. I'm calling it WP Animal Rescue until we find something better for the name. And again, just look at this in terms of real client. The goals of the website are, if you're an animal shelter, it's providing education, donation. Today's topic, facilitating pet adoptions, recruiting volunteers. We haven't covered everything yet, but these are some of the ideas we've thrown out, typically what you might see for an animal shelter. And again, even though our project is, we're building an animal shelter, which all of you may or may not ever build in your lifetimes, hopefully you'll catch some tools and techniques and things that we're doing that are relevant to whatever you're building. Peter, any other background stuff you want to give on the goals or kind of where we are at this point in the project?
No, I think you got it. Yeah, the challenge of doing things with only the free stuff, we'll talk about in a little bit, but we'll introduce a few more plugins as we go, because plugins make your life a lot easier, and we'll highlight those as we go.
Yeah. So again, our starting point was this, and we veered off of it a little bit. In fact, if you look at this, the URL below, this is just a sample website for a nonprofit. It's not even built with WordPress. So again, that was one of our goals, to show that when you're out there looking for design ideas, you don't have to narrowly just say, show me blah, blah, blah within WordPress. There's plenty of great websites out there. But again, this was our starting point of at least some organization layout for the homepage, but we're starting to deviate from that a bit, and that's fine. So what we have right now, if you haven't seen it, this is kind of what the site is looking like, and I'll bring this up in a second so you can see it a little bit larger. But this is where we've finished. So we spent our first session really setting up our local environment, talking about the tools we're going to use. That was part 1. Part 2, if I recall, was I was building the header, so I built out the header on the site, and Peter started to build out this kind of hero image, that very first section. And then part 3 was fixing some things, polishing some things together, and then we built out kind of this next section. I think I did the 50-50, and Peter did the, I don't know what we call this anymore, the icons or blurb section here. So the point at where we're at right now, we have a starting point for our homepage. And again, we could have continued just to build out, more sections and things like that. And we eventually will. But I think this is a good time to introduce a little bit more of that complexity. So if you look at a typical animal shelter, not all of them, but like animal shelter website, they'll typically have a section like this on the homepage. So, pets that are available for adoption. So our goal for tonight is to build out this kind of a section, so display this on the homepage. So if you look at this, this is something new that's displaying on the homepage, but behind the scenes, each one of these really has its own individual page with more information. So our intent is to have this so that it's, each of them has a detail page behind it. And from a maintenance standpoint, if you think about this, it's probably be volunteers running a shelter. They're not going to be website savvy people. You want something where they can easily maintain it over time. So as new pets come along, they can quickly add them from the back end, remove them, make updates, etc. So that was our goal. That's what we're going to show you, at least what we're going to start building out tonight. All right. Anything else, Peter? Anything else out on the thing we're building, or should I dive in?
Go in.
All right.
Yep.
So let's start talking about custom post types. What are they? So it's kind of funny. It's one of those things where it's easier to define it by using other examples of things that you've already seen in WordPress. So again, if you've been working with WordPress for any period of time, you've probably at least run into the two post types that are available built into WordPress. And these aren't the only ones, but these are the ones probably most common that you'll see. So that's posts and pages. So what's the difference between a post and a page? So posts, generally, when you say posts, you think of blog posts, or most people think of blog posts, because that's really the history of WordPress itself. It really kind of started as a blogging platform. So for the most part, posts are really intended to be blog articles. I mean, they could be news articles, and depends on your definition of a blog. Whereas pages are something that's like more static content. So like a home page, an about us page, a contact page, etc. It's not that it's blog news. It's something that's basically sharing some information statically. So as you can imagine, like a blog post is more time sensitive. So what I mean by that is, in general, you see newer blog articles first before older ones, whereas a website pages can be there forever. They're long lived. They may not change that often. And as I said, blog posts in general, by default, there's different ways you can organize them. You can organize your blog by date, author, etc. Pages, though, you have to actually, as you're building out pages, you have to organize them. And generally, you do that by linking to a new page, either through a navigation menu or through other pages or buttons, etc. You have to provide that kind of connection between pages. Other big difference, too, is posts have categories and tags. Pages don't have categories or tags. So a category or tag is just another way to filter and organize your content on a blog. And by default, posts have archive pages, and I'll show you what archive page looks like a little bit more, and pages do not. Just hierarchical, what that really means is posts by definition, or almost think of it as like a running stream of content, as opposed to pages. You can link them together in a parent-child relationship. So if you imagine a menu, you have a menu that has sub-menus underneath it. Those are probably pages that are linked together. They don't have to be, but you can link them together in kind of a parent-child relationship. So those are kind of the two post types you normally would see built into WordPress or out of the box if you had a fresh install of WordPress. But what's a custom post type? So a custom post type is something that doesn't really fit into either one of those. It's not a blog post, it's not a website page, but it is some kind of structured content that you want to build into your website. So you've probably run into these, again, if you've been using any kind of website that has plugins or things on it, or a theme that may expose this to you. So things like products. So if you have an e-commerce site, if you ever used WooCommerce, those products are really custom post types. They have a lot of, they can be very complex custom post types, but that's what they are. Team members is another common one. So, or an organization of some sort of people, that could be a custom post type. Events, if you use the events calendar, those are custom post types. Or pets, in our case, that's what we're building out. So in all these examples, think of it as it's structured content. It doesn't really fit into a page or a post, but it's something that you want to display it, you want to store it in the WordPress database, as if it was a page or a post. So again, as I just said, the thing about custom post types that's interesting is they can act as either a page or a post. So what I mean by that is when you create, and we'll do that shortly, when you create your custom post type, you can say, do you want it to behave as a page or a post? So if you want it to behave as a post, for example, you'll inherit certain properties and features of a post, things like archive pages, etc. But when you look at it in terms of, if you really dig under the covers in the WordPress database, all these things, whether you're a page, a post, or custom post type, they're stored in the same table. So, from WordPress's standpoint, they're all in this WP post table, but they have a post type value that helps WordPress determine what these different things are. The other thing that's interesting about custom post types is you can have custom taxonomies. So as I mentioned before, what is a taxonomy? It's just a way to organize your data. So if you think about products, for example, products have sizes or colors, so that's a taxonomy. A blog post or a news site can have breaking news, whatever, current news, etc. Those are different ways to organize that data. So WordPress by default already has a couple of built-in taxonomies, categories and tags. So if you're creating a blog post, you can create your own categories on the fly, or you can tag certain things. So again, those are ways to kind of filter or sort or order your data. So when you're creating a custom post type, you can also, as I said, you can create your own custom taxonomies like size, color, etc. So the purpose of creating that, and you don't have to when you create a custom post type, but in general, it's a useful way to sort or filter your data for display purposes and organization purposes. So we're gonna jump into code or jump into the demo in a second. But so how do you create one of these custom post type? Well, you could create it by code, and we're not going to cover that tonight. So that's a lot more detailed. But if you we may see a little bit of the code if we look behind the scenes of one of these plugins if we have time a little bit later. But in general, if you were coding it, and in the past, I've seen a lot of websites where they have coded custom post types, in code. In general, that would be added to either the theme, or child theme, or inputted really as a custom plugin. Or an example, even WooCommerce, for example, if you install WooCommerce, it has the code in that plugin that basically is registering those custom post types of products onto your website. But tonight, when we're doing it, really the two most common custom post type plugins that I've seen at least are custom post type UI and Pods. We're not going to touch Pods because Pods has its own framework and has its own kind of quirks to it. I don't have a lot of experience with it. Maybe others have. At least everything I've used has been custom post type UI. Let's jump into the demo here. Let me switch over 1 second. All right, so again, just to ground us here a little bit. So what we're talking about, here's our website. Here's what we currently have. We have our section here. This is where we finished off. And what we're going to do is we're going to create our custom post type, or in display, I should say, our adoptable pets section over here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to, and I should have actually done this ahead of time because this is really not that interesting. I'm gonna add the custom post type UI plugin because I don't think it's in here, right?
No, and this is good. And Ray, while you're doing that,
Yep.
I want to let everybody know we're doing exactly what is one of the more terrifying things to do as we're building live on the site. We had been doing things, a lot of the work kind of on our local loads and all, but now we are actually building this site live. I mean, honestly, as you go and you can look at what's going on at build.hartfordwp.com as we add things. So yeah, we're adding our plugins on the fly. We've practiced on
I try to practice, right? Yeah, this is the first time we're doing it.
I know, right? Exactly.
So once you install this custom post type UI, you'll see this thing gets added into your menu. And I won't spend a lot of time going through this because there's actually quite a bit in here. But what I'm going to walk through is creating a custom post type, and then we're going to create a couple taxonomies for it. So when you're adding one for the very first time, the only option you get here is to add a new post type. So again, if you think about what we're building, it's a pets listing, an animals listing. So it requires you to put in what's called a slug. So what a slug is actually that URL name. So whatever your website name is something. That's the slug. So that's the first thing you have to provide is a slug name. So in this case, we're gonna call it pets. And what's nice about custom post.ui is honestly, if you're just using the really simple features of it by default, you almost don't have to touch any of these other settings in here. So by default, it's going to say, hey, what do I want the plural label of this to be? So let me back up a little bit. What this is defining is, if you look at, let's say, posts, for example. So if you see my cursor over here, so posts being a post type, which is kind of, it's in the name, but here, this idea of all posts, add new categories, etc., or pages, all add new, those terms is what I'm defining here. So I have pets as the post slug. So what do I want the plural label of pets to be? I don't have to do this, but just to show you what it looks like. So the plural of pets is pets. What's a singular pet? It's pet. So at this point, I can just, because I'll go back and edit this. So I hit enter, and at this point, I've got a pets custom post type. Done. Done. Okay, next. but obviously it's kind of useless because I have to do some more things to it. But if you see over here, it has a little stick pin figure pets. So let me just show you what's in here. I'll go back to nothing. So it's not a very useful custom post type. So let's add some usefulness to it.
Yeah. So basically at that point, it's a post.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's a renamed post. Exactly. So now let's make it be a little bit more specific. So if I go into edit post types, and if I had multiples here, they would show up in the selection list. Okay, so now we're going to go into edit. So you can add a description if you want. I'm not going to touch that for our sake. Let me see, what am I going to change? I got my notes here. Labels, all right, so menu name, I'm going to keep this as pets, because that's fine. All items will say all pets. That's good. So as you're going through each of these items, just substitute the name of the slug that you put in here and say, does it make sense? Does that term make sense? If it does, leave it alone. So for example, add new, I could say add new pet or add new pets, but to me, that's for the sake of time here, I'm not going to touch those. But I will show you a couple that probably make a little bit more sense. So instead of featured image, because featured image to me implies a blog, let's say here we're going to say pet image. Instead of set featured image, let's say set pet image. And you'll see in a second where these things show up, these labels show up. And I'll say remove pet image, and then here use pet image. Use pet. Okay. Archives will leave alone. We'll leave those. Sorry, my little notes here.
So Ray is building the user interface for adding pets to this website.
Right. Great point. So this is all stuff that you're going to see on the back end. This isn't doing anything to the front end of displaying this yet. So that whole displaying part is part 2 that I'll cover afterwards. This is for the administrators. So again, if you think about the reason I'm doing this is to make somebody's life easier who's not a technical person. So you want to use terms, you want to make sure that what you're doing here is clarifying what that other person will be doing at some point with this custom post type. So this whole first section here is just the labels. Those are really the administrative labels. And in fact, what I will do, let me just save this now because you can see what's changed. So now for pets, I haven't added one yet, so hold on. Sorry, I jumped ahead. So let me go back to select my pet again. Pets. Here we go. So the only thing I've changed is the image. So instead of featured image, it's saying pet image. But now here's where I want to start to do some things a little bit different than a post type. So I won't go through all of these settings. And in fact, custom post.ui has really very good documentation. That's why I picked it as well too, and a lot of tutorials on YouTube for it. So if you want to really dive deep into every one of these settings, you certainly can. But I'm just going to change a couple of them. So I'm going to change. Let's see. We want it to be public. We want it to be queryable. We want it deleted with the user. So have archive. So this one's actually a little bit strange. So archive pages, I'll show you in a second. By default, custom post.ui says, no, you don't want archive pages, an archive page for your custom post type, but we do. And you'll see a little bit later why we do. So what is our archive slug going to be? I don't know if I even need to do this. I'm going to say pets just for the sake of clarity. We want to include in a search. So here's the capability type. So this is where you can define, do I want this thing to behave more like a post or a page? In our case, I wanted it to behave like a post, so I leave that alone. Hierarchical. No, I don't want it to be hierarchical. I want to leave that alone because I'm not going to be linking these to each other. You could, if you imagine that you're creating, I don't know, maybe people, back to that team. So you could, I guess, link people together through organizations. But in our example, we're not doing anything hierarchical. Leave everything else alone. The rewrite is alone. Query var alone. Menu position. You can move this around too. So if you don't like where it is, you can move it up or down. Again, on the admin menu here. We obviously want to show in the menu icon. So this is kind of a silly one, but I don't like that little stick pin. So let's find something more appropriate. So here you can actually use your own images, or you can use what they call dash icons. So these are the icons that come with WordPress, and that's what these little pictures are. So if you click on this link, it'll show you the WordPress dash icons list. So in here in the list, I already know because I've searched for it, there is a picture that's appropriate for us, which is, actually, no, I'm going to search for it because I'm not sure I get the spelling right. There we go. So pets, if you click on this,
there you go.
There you go. It tells you, that looks good. So that tells you the name, dash icons, dash pets. So if I go in here and as soon as I type in dash icons.pets, once I save this, that will change to that icon. So again, you don't have to do it, but it's, it's something that's, whoops, wrong place. Don't put it there. Put it there instead. There. And then here's some additional things. So again, by default, this does inherit the functionality or properties of a post, but there could be certain things that you may or may not want. So for example, authors, to me for pets, author is kind of meaningless. But excerpts, this is a good one that Peter caught this when we were testing together. So you probably want an excerpt for a pet. So what does an excerpt mean? It means just, a small summary of the description. So we have a long, we can use the editor to put a long detailed description of the pet, but we also maybe want just like a short summary of that pet. And then we're going to skip taxonomies for now because we're going to create a taxonomy in a second. So let me just save this post type. And we'll look at this real quick because I'm going to add some pets in a second. So if we now look at our pets, you can see the icon changed there. So now it's a pet print. It's a little bit of a paw print. And just, I'm going to quickly create a taxonomy because I'll make sure I'm not watching the clock there, Peter. I'm probably running a little bit long.
It's okay.
Okay. So let's create a taxonomy called pet categories. And again, you may not need this for your custom post type, but because we are an animal shelter as opposed to a cat shelter or dog shelter, we want to have the ability to distinguish between dogs and cats. So there was nothing in what I just did in the custom post type, which really lets us do that. You could just have people free-form type in, is it a cat or a dog? But we want to at least have some control over that. So we're going to create a taxonomy here called, pets categories. And this one, I think I'm okay with the label. Category. Pets category. And we only want this, again, this taxonomy only makes sense for pets. It doesn't make sense for any of these other post types. So I'm going to add this now, and I'm going to go back and edit just one feature on that. So this taxonomy, we haven't used it. You'll see it in action in a second. So we have categories. It's assigned to the pets post type. And let's see, everything else, I think I'm going to leave the same. The only thing I'm going to change on it is one of these properties down here. So show in. Let's see, show an admin column. So this I'm going to set to true. So show an admin column, what that means is when I go here to pets and look at all pets, it'll be in that list. So it's just so I can visually see it quickly. You don't need to do this. Otherwise you'd have to click into every one of your pets to see this category. So that's one thing I want to change. The other one I want to change is show in quick edits. I want to set that to true. Where did that go? Where are you?
I think it's set down below.
Oh, okay. Show in REST API. Show in quick edit. Yeah. So again, this is just a convenience thing. So I want to have the ability just on that main screen to be able to select these. And then the final one is hierarchical. Is it rewrite hierarchical? There's this one, hierarchical. So I want to set this to true. And the reason for this is if I didn't set this to true, then people could actually just type in these categories. I kind of want to keep it structured, and this way I can make a checkbox show up inside of the custom post type. So let me save this. And now let's see in action. I think it'll make more sense as I now start creating a couple of them. So let's go look at our pets. So there we go. We have pet categories. Let me start with that first. So let me start with the pet categories. So
and again, I'm going to just say this is one of the coolest things. We are customizing WordPress, adding this custom post type, and building the interface for working with it. And I'll say this a few times because it was like when I discovered this early on, it was like, oh, this is the tool for me. Okay, Ray, sorry.
Well, no, it's good you bring that up too. It's one of those things, like I said, especially I say it's an intermediate thing because I think sometimes people don't know, you don't know what you don't know. And
Correct.
As you build websites, I would like to go back to some old websites I built and break things out into custom post types because I was always like either repeating myself or making life difficult for myself.
Right.
Where you could implement what we're showing through code and other ways, but this is a nice handy way for you or the next person maintaining a site to be able to really control the data and separate the data, which is this, versus the display, which we'll show a little bit later. Let's just do this real quick. So we're gonna do cats and we're gonna do dogs. That's our two categories, cats and dogs. So now I'm gonna add a pet. Let's see how quickly I can add these pets. And I've already put the images in there. So we're gonna have a couple of them. Let's start with a dog first, because that's the easy one. So we got a dog in here called Buddy. Buddy's a good dog's name. And so for Buddy, what we're going to do is this is going to be Buddy's excerpt. So over here in my excerpt, we're going to say Buddy is a friendly collie mix, yada, yada. And here's the longer text. So this is going to be the actual detailed description for Buddy. So I'm just, for the sake of time, just pasting this in here. But if you look at this so far, this kind of looks like a post. So everything I'm using the Gutenberg editor or block editor. This is just my page title normally, but in this case, it's my pet title. Here's description. Peter's gonna show a little bit later when we talk about custom fields. There's gonna be more stuff we're gonna add to this, but for now, this is just what I need to do to create this. And then I'm gonna create some, this is what we've changed. If you recall, this would say normally featured image and set featured image. Because I changed the labels, now it says set pet image. So we've got the one dog here, there's Buddy. So I'm going to set his image. And then from a category standpoint, this is what I meant too, because we've added this taxonomy now, I can say, is he, in this case, maybe it's a cat and a dog. No, you can't control this, but there's probably ways to do this, but play along here. We're just going to select one category where we say he's a dog. And then I'm going to publish this. And are you ready to publish? Go ahead and publish. Okay, there it is. So that's my dog. And let me go back here. And what I'll probably do for the sake of time is I'm going to add one cat. And then maybe, Peter, what I might do is while you're doing your section, I'll add those other two cats on the back end.
Yeah.
So let's do, I think you named this one Banks. I like Banks. So Banks, let's do, here's the summary for Banks. Copy that. So that's going to be our excerpt. And then here's the long description of Banks. Again, you guys, this doesn't really matter. You guys can type whatever you like if you're following along. Back to the pet again for a second. So Banks is a cat and set pet image. And which one's, that's Banks, right?
That's Banks. That's my Banks.
That's your Banks. All right, that's why. And I think that's it for Banks. Let me publish Banks. I'm going to publish. So, and I'm going to stop my section in a second. Yep. So if you look, all I have right now is we have a custom post type. Sorry, one custom post type called pets. We have two things we've added. We've added a cat and a dog. So if you recall in the taxonomy, how I set one of those settings to say show an admin, that's what it means. So now I've got this column in here that shows me pet categories, which is nice because I can click and filter. The other thing I did in that taxonomy was I said, what's the taxonomy? No, it was the custom post type UI. I said, I want to do quick edit. So when I quick edit, I can just change my categories here if I needed to. Again, it's more of a time saving thing than anything else. But at this point, we just have the data. We haven't displayed it yet. That's going to be part 2, where I'm going to show you what we're going to do with this. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my share and hand it over to Peter, and he's going to talk about custom fields.
I'll talk about custom fields. Absolutely. All right. So let me take over.
You have the slides, right, for what you're showing?
I do.
Okay, great. Because then
I
I'll
do.
just add those last
Yeah.
2 cats.
Yeah.
Actually, 3 cats. 3 more.
All righty. I just have to go to where we were. All right. So now we're talking about the custom fields, and what we were showing so far is basically Ray did a great job showing us this idea of creating a post, this new custom post type. But now it's like you look at it and say, okay, so what attributes do I want to attach to it so that when I'm building this out, I can be really efficient. I can help users who are entering data and all. So let's get into, what are custom fields? And custom fields are additional content fields added to posts, and it's called metadata. So metadata includes things like author and publish date and all. And we're adding to that list of what the content that is beyond what's already built into a post, the title, the content, the featured image, the excerpt, which we've done. So examples of what you might have in a custom field: price, quantity, in our case with the pets, date available, the facts about the pet. So these are the specific details that we want to have encourage the data, the entry, and then so that we can ultimately present it with the content that we're entering. So what we've got, so WordPress core, when you talk about custom fields, WordPress core includes simple text custom fields, which are something that you can enable if you go into your screen preferences and turn on to view the custom field panel, or if you're using Classic Editor, it's just under options and custom fields. And it's very simple in terms of metadata. The metadata is handled with the key value pair. So you give it a name, you give it a value, you're kind of building them on the fly. Not ultimately very useful, hard to deal with, especially when you're looking at, okay, how do I output it? Now you're getting into code. It's something built into core, but something that we're not using. What we are using is a plugin. So there are several high quality plugins for custom fields, free and premium. Pods was the free. We're going to use something called Advanced Custom Fields. I use Toolset, that's a premium tool, but what these tools do is they give us a greater variety of field types. You get numbers, date, check boxes, image galleries, on and on, all these different types of fields that you can put into your data entry screen and then ultimately use to present on your website, on the post pages that we're creating. Yeah, it gives us a lot more control over the type of entry that we're going to provide to the users who are adding stuff through their edit screens. It's much more friendly. It prompts people to fill in this piece of data, and then we have that better ability to output that content. I mentioned we're picking the most popular, which is often known as ACF, Advanced Custom Fields. There's 2 million installs, over 2 million installs of Advanced Custom Fields. So that'll be what we're going to use on our site. And now this is sort of like the hierarchy or the data elements. So Ray created the pets post type, custom post type. The taxonomy that he's added to it are dog and cat so far. We can add the birds and rabbits and things like that. Those are all be pet types. The standard fields that are part of the post that are already existing, the title, the content, the featured image, which now we're calling the pet image, and the excerpt. But now what we're going to add are custom fields, and we'll add you can add any number of these things, but for our example and where we are so far in building out this site, I'm going to go with breed, age, color, size when grown, pet info, so I can show kind of text boxes, the date, not Dave, but the date
Mr.
available.
Typo.
Dave is available, I know, but the date available, because that's something, sometimes it's like, oh, you're waiting for the pet to clear whatever, or you know, the pet's been there for a little while, and maybe, you know, think about that guy first because he's been in the shelter, and then the adoption fee. This comes from the experience of actually having recently adopted a couple of cats. And you know, when you're doing this for whatever you're going to build out, you're going to think about what are those custom fields, and I spelled custom on that, or no, what are the custom fields that are important to that, to this custom post type that you're going to build, if when you do it, that makes sense for the thing that you're presenting, in our case, pet. So let me bring over now, and this is fun because I get to refresh the pages that I have and see
All the pets are there.
what Ray's done. Yeah. So for example, right now we had generate blocks, and now we're going to, in Ray, you added custom post type UI. I'm going to add advanced custom fields. And this is where I'm going to also give you a quick view of this idea of I was talking about before, when you have a WordPress.org account, and if you have favorites, if you save favorites, so I can obviously put in advanced custom fields and all, but I can call up my favorites here. This is my Peter Ingersoll is my WordPress.org username. These are a bunch of plugins that I favorited, and here's advanced custom fields. So you could use my username and see some of the things that I've already favorited. Advanced custom, I'm going to activate it. And when I activate it, what we're going to see is now in our menu, we have, just like the custom post type UI added this menu choice, now advanced custom field is adding this new menu choice of custom fields. So we're going to come over here and we're going to look and see, okay, so custom fields. Now, the way custom fields work is they're presented in field groups. Field groups are kind of as they sound like, you know, you're grouping a bunch of fields that you're adding, and these become the meta boxes of the data entry that you can assign to a page or a post, and you can assign them to, you know, various page and post types that you have on your site. You can put them on all of them if you want. So we'll show you that. But the first thing you need to do is you need to create a field group, and I'm going to bring my over here. Got my side, and I call this field group. The first thing you do is you name it. I'm going to name it pet details. And before I get into adding actual fields, because this is the area here where you add field, I'm going to say, well, where do I want this? I'm building out this box of fields that somebody's going to do some data entry in. Where do I want that to show up? And I want it is a post type, so you can see all the different things you have, but I want it to show up in post type, where the post type is equal to pet, which is the new custom post type. That wouldn't, if Ray did not add the post type, this would not be an option for me. But since Ray has added that, advanced custom field says, oh, well, here's another post type that exists on your site. Let me add that, you know. So now I'm saying, whatever I'm going to do here, I would like to show this where the post type is equal to pet. Now, what I can also do here, let me double check. Got my fields here. So the nice thing is we can come in and without, you know, getting into all the details here, and pretty much that's where you need to start. It is active. It's something we're going to use. So I'm going to publish this just so it's, you know, there's no fields, but I now have a field group. If I go back to my field group list, now called pet details. Originally, I had nothing there. So I'm going to edit this field group, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding fields. Right. So there's my place to add fields. Let me get my list over here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a field. and this is going to be, and the explanations here are kind of nice, right? So this is a name which will appear on the edit page. So we're going to call it breed, right? So the animals are breed. The field name, this is the kind of the slug, if you will. This is the piece that would be used in code, the slug for this field when we're using it, and we're going to use it in something called a short code. In this case, it is a text field. We could put instructions, and in one area I'll show you. We could decide whether it's required or not. So for each field, and the required is literally if you're going to do some data entry, you don't fill this in. It'll say, hey, before you can save it, this value is required. A default value, if there is, we wouldn't do that here. A placeholder text might be, please enter the breed. It's similar to, but I don't think we need to actually even do anything here. So I'm going to add that field, and now I have the field breed. My next field is going to be age. Now this is interesting because so it defaults, it says, okay, great, we'll call it age. Now age, you might think, do I want to do it? This is an example of where you have to think about the data types. So you can say, well, age is a number, because you can change the field type to all these different choices. You can have text area, which would be like entering paragraphs, number, range between two things, email URLs. These are all, they get qualified, they get used a little bit differently. But I'm going to leave this as text right now, because sometimes, you'll say, well, this cat is 4 months old, or, we think he's 2 years old, if he's a stray, or that type of thing. So you might not want to lock in this particular thing, that this field down to a specific number. I'm going to add that field. Color. Again, for pets, the color would probably be a free-form text entry. Again, you don't need a paragraph of text, you just need a line of text, so it's not a text area. I wouldn't do anything like a checkbox because there's way too many variations of pet colors. My next field, I'm going to say size when grown. I think that's important, especially if it's a dog. How big is this dog going to get? Now, one of the things that sometimes I do, like here's an example of, well, okay, so it's defaulting to, I'm using multiple words, the field name that's going to be used in the code, uses underscore between, but you can also customize this. Maybe you just want to use the word size just because, it's something to do. So it makes it a little bit easier kind of on the coding side in some cases. You don't have to do that. I'm just showing this as an example. Again, I'm keeping this as a text field because, again, you might want to give it as exploit, between 45 and 60 pounds as opposed to any specific size. Now we get into, I want to add a field, a different kind of field. I'm going to add something called pet info. I'm naming this field, and you'll see all of this once it's out. We'll call it pet info, but I'm going to make this a checkbox field, right? So this is going to allow me to enter a number of values that the user, the person entering this, can check on. So and what's nice is you can go back and add these if you want. They're not quite categories. So let me, did I move off? Yeah, pet info checkbox. They're not really categories. They're specific pieces of information that may apply, and I like doing them in something like a checkbox versus getting a little mixed up in some of the taxonomy things. But what you could do is you can put in instructions here, and I'll show you where that applies. Check all that apply. Now these are instructions for the authors, the people who are entering to this pet, for example. Now the choices, enter each choice on a new line. For control, you may specify both value and label if you want to do something different. We're just going to use the choices, and I copied and pasted them over here. And each one of these will be a checkbox. It's spayed or neutered, house trained, shots up to date, good with dogs, good with cats. And this list could definitely be longer if we need to. I am going to add a different type of field now. I'm going to add a field, and this field is going to be date available. not Dave, date, available. We'll leave that to its default name. And in this field type, I'm going to call this, I'm going to look for a date picker. So it's a field, but it's going to give me a little calendar that I can pick a date. And then what we could do is choose, well, how does it, when you're editing the post, what's the format, and when you're showing the post. So you might want to say, well, just on the back end, when I'm editing it, just show me the date is, you know, the kind of the number. But on the front end, let's be a little nicer and present my return format is going to be the date filled out. Week starts on, you can control how the calendar shows. Does it start? Do you put your Saturday and Sundays? You know, if you're used to Sunday being the first day of the week, you know, that type of thing. So we've added that field. And I'm going quick, but I think, what do we've got? Is that the last? Oh, we've got one more field to add. I'm gonna add the fee, the field adoption fee. All right, we can leave that, and then let's have this just be a number, okay? So that it's that way we can decide when we show it to put maybe the $sign for it. So the adoption fee or the donation fee or whatever. So I've added all of these fields. I could have been saving them as I went, but I'm going to now update this. So when I updated, all of those nicely collapsed. So you can see these are the fields that I've added: breed, age, color, size when grown, pet info, date available, and adoption fee. So now those fields are now associated, this field group, with the post type pet. So hopefully when we come over here to, I'll open it in a new window just to make sure, to my pets list, and we look at Avis, Ray's been entering in the back end there, and I go to edit. You'll see here, and the one thing I don't like with the block editor, by the way, and Ray, I don't know if you've noticed this, but the meta boxes, they haven't made particularly elegant.
Yeah.
They're kind of full width. This is the one time that I go off of full screen just because it feels like it's a little bit more contained.
Yeah.
But here is what we were seeing. We were seeing the title, and we were seeing what was entered. And now what we've got is this meta box that is filled with all the fields that we've added. So I'm going to go to the one that I've already done, and maybe I'll come in and sneak a couple pieces of data in here. So I'm going to go to all pets. I'm going to go to my buddy Binks, grab his information. So Binks is a domestic short hair. He is 7 months old. Oops. Months. He is a black and white tuxedo. And let's just say he's going to be 12 pounds. And yeah, and what I had in my example is I put in instructions saying enter size ending with the range in pounds, and I'm going to just assume that I put that there. I can go back and add it. Check all it applied, spayed, neutered, house trained. His vets are up to date. He's good with cats. I don't know about dogs, and good with kids. Date available. Now this is, see this particular field, we did a date picker. So let's just say he became available on September 1st, and the adoption fee, let's say it's $200. So I'm going to update that. Did we put his, we got his image, beautiful. And that's it. I mean, that is entering the data, but guess what? If I go here and I view the pet,
That's part two.
That's part two.
That's a good segue. That's part
We
two.
flew right through that. Questions?
Yeah. Any questions before we? I know we're from a time standpoint. I think we're okay. We're a little bit over. Yeah, we're okay. Making sense to people so far. So just to kind of recap, we've created a custom post type, the pets custom post type. We added some categories, so you can say, is it a cat or a dog? And then Peter added additional fields to it to really help describe that. So again, if you think about this from if it's not pets, if you're using WooCommerce, for example, for products, same kind of thing. A product is like a pet, has categories. It could be like prices, size, et cetera, et cetera. So, you've probably seen these things before. That's why when you see custom post types, you've probably seen it in your theme or a plugin and said, how do they do that? It's not that hard. So that's kind of what we're showing. All right, so let me grab the screen back.
You got it?
Make sure I'm on the right thing. That's okay. Okay, so there we are. All right, so that was part one. So part one is kind of, we've created the stuff, great, but honestly, as Peter showed, right now, how do I see it? And this was a bit more of the challenging part. So as you recall, we're trying to do this with free plugins and not install a bunch of paid plugins, because if you're using page builders, I use Divi for a lot of the sites I build. The solution would be completely different if using Elementor, et cetera. So with our constraints of trying to use the block editor, this is what we're going to show you what we came up with. So this may not be the solution you would use necessarily if you're already working on a site that has a page builder or has a theme or something in place. But again, starting from scratch for our site, this is kind of our solution. So let me first cover, at least on the front end. So how do you display a list of, so this is one of the first things you want, a list of the custom post types. So if you recall, when I created that custom post type, pets, one of the things I checked off was, I said, I want it to be like the post. So remember, I want it to behave as if it was a blog post. So posts by default come with this concept of an archive page. So if you ever looked at your website and typed in like /news, whatever your blog page is, it'll show you a list that your theme controls the styling of it. It shows you a list of all your posts. So because we said our pets are like a blog post, and I checked that setting in custom post.ui, we already have an archive page. We have the ability to have an archive page. So if we look at our site, let me go to the front end of our site here, which is, nope, not that one. I can close that. I can close that. Let me go to the front end of our site. So if we go to our site, the name of the archive page, if you recall, when I created the custom post.ui is pets. So by default, this is what it looks like, which is not bad. I haven't done any styling. So our theme is controlling this. So we're using Cadence, if you missed our earlier session. So we're using the free Cadence theme, and Cadence has styling for an archive page. I could change this. I won't go into that today, but if you go to the customizer for Cadence, you actually have the ability to add more stuff or make this look slightly different. But by default, it's not bad. We've gotten this for free, and it knows that we have an archive page. So this is great. We'll use this archive page a little bit later. But what we also want to do is we want to display this on the home page. In fact, I guess I did close it up. If you recall, we want our homepage to look something like this. We want a section on our homepage of featured pets. So how do we do that? Well, we do that. Let me get back to my page here. Oops. Normally in the past, you'd have to do that by code. This is why custom post types, I think, were a little bit scary for people in custom fields, because it was easy to create it. As you saw, those plugins are great, but not so long ago, displaying it was actually more of a pain in the neck, the thing you think would be easier. So you would have to add code. You'd actually have to either use a child theme or something else and change your page layout and do some queries and stuff to display that information. Well, that, again, you may see examples of that if you're using an older theme. But in our world of Gutenberg and blocks, there's actually some blocks you can use to do this and make your life a lot easier. So the one I'm going to show just for my demo site what this looks like. But if you recall, when we looked at WordPress 5.8, there's a new block that got added called the query loop block. And I showed that, I believe, a little bit in more depth in that last meetup that we did. So you can look at that if you want to see details of how this was built. But on my local site, which let me find it real quick. I was spinning up as Peter was talking. On my local site, I've got this demo page here where I created what I did was, I added a block. I added the query loop block. In fact, maybe let me, yeah, I think I have time to do this. I will just get rid of this real quick. I'll remove it. So I added a block in here for the query loop. So again, you need WordPress 5.8 to get this. And for some reason, these are in the, where are they? They are in the strange space, the theme section. So query loop. So what a query loop by default is saying is, hey, I'm going to get I'm going to loop through either, in this case, in general, it's posts. It says I'll loop through your blog posts, and it provides you the ability to retrieve data, filter it, et cetera, et cetera. But in our case, because our custom post type, we said it's like a post, it's a it's pets. We can change this to say, let me get to it in a second. We can change this in a second to say to use our custom post type. So first off, I want to modify the query. Sorry, this is why I was trying not to do this in the session. But I guess, so imagine we would have it look something like, I don't know, I'm not going to end up actually using this one. So let's pretend we're going to have it look like this. So this is, again, we're using a new block that came out of the box with Gutenberg, I'm sorry, with WordPress 5.8. So rather than saying posts, we can say pets. So it's going to display, right now, it's just going to display a single one, but I can format this and change it to say display, 3 items per page. But I don't want them looking as a, vertical list. I want them to display as a grid. So we could use this block, and I'm going to jump quickly from why we don't want to use it. One of the problems, though, is it's very limited. So if you recall in WordPress, our WordPress 5.8 overview last month, there's a lot of these new blocks and features added to WordPress 5.8, but to be honest, they're not quite there yet. I don't think they're quite ready for full-blown usage. So, for example, this featured image that I have, as you can see, it's all different sizes. I can adjust that. I can't adjust it through this UI. I'd actually have to add code to do it and CSS styling. So to make our lives a little bit easier, because we are using Cadence, Cadence has something similar to this, but it has much better styling. It's kind of built into, it works well with the Cadence theme that we're using. So this is, back to our earlier discussion of using plugins when it's the right time. This seems to be the right time to use this plugin. So because we're using Cadence, if I go to the Cadence theme, I should say. So Cadence is a theme, and Cadence also has a set of blocks that are available as a free plugin. You can actually use the blocks without using the Cadence theme. They seem to work better together. But so even though we have the Cadence theme installed and activated, I now need to search for Cadence blocks. So here we go. So it's free. Again, we're sticking with the free theme here, or the free concept. So I'm installing it, I'm activating it. So now what this does is I'm going to go to the home page. This is the real website we're working on. And here we are. Here's our front page. So as you recall, this is the real site of our website. We have the last section Peter built was here. That was this section. And now I'm going to add my new section, which I want to look kind of like what I showed in that demo a second ago. So let's add, we're going to start our blocks. And I like, one thing I really do like from WordPress 5.8 is I really do like this list view. It helps me see where I am and things. So I'm going to add a new, let's see, I'm going to use the Cadence row to begin with, just to make things, kind of sections stay together. So I'm going to add a new row, a new layout. I'm going to add a new row, it's going to be a single column row. And the first thing I want is just a headline to kind of say that this is our featured animals. So I can use a plain old heading section, or I'm going to use, since I did the Cadence blocks already, I'm going to use the advanced heading because I think the styling is a little bit better on this. And I'm going to call this section featured adoptable pets. Let me get my name in here. I just have to featured adoptable pets. Featured. So this is, I haven't done anything yet with our post types. I'm just setting things for us. All right, so there, it's gonna be centered. I'm not gonna do a lot of styling here. So this is inside of a row, and again, because it's all in a section, that's a heading. I'm gonna make another row because I want some spacing between these things. So I'm gonna add another row, another single row. Okay, so here's where I'm finally going to do what I really meant. The reason I installed this Cadence blocks to begin with. So Cadence comes with a really nice block for posts. It is this guy. Yeah, this one, posts. So the Cadence post block works kind of like that query loop, but it gives you a lot more control over things. So let me walk through some of these settings. Again, this isn't really a presentation necessarily on all of the features of Cadence, but I'll walk through these, at least the most important ones. So our post type we want pets, right? So we want this showing pets, and I mean, that's the first thing I clicked on. Already it looks better. It already looks a lot better than the built-in WordPress one. Just doing simple stuff. Like it's really making sure that all of these are sized the same. So again, so now I have a lot more control too. So I can say, you know, how do I want to order this? So it's thinking it's a post by default because it's inherited properties of a post. But let's say I don't want it to be by date. I want it to be by A to Z, just by name. So we get the dog in there. So Buddy's in there with Banks. You can control the number of items that display here. So in this case, I think it's going 6, but let's say we want it, because we want it in this one section. I just want 3 of these displaying here. So let's make it look like 3. I'm not going to play with any of these other things, I don't think. The layout looks good. We have 3 columns. I'm going to have unboxed. So what boxed means is it's trying to fit it within some padding and borders around it. So I like unboxed, just to make it look a little bit wider. So that's nice. It looks a little bit more pleasing. And then image size, I'm going to keep that image. Oh, that looks fine. You can change the size. So all these settings that I'm doing here, back on the default one from WordPress, you don't have control over this. So you can do these things through styling, but you'd have to write some CSS rules to do that. Right. And then again, just to make our life simpler, I'm going to turn off the author. Doesn't make any sense. Even the date doesn't make any sense. That looks good. And I'm going to change read more. So let me click on that. Oops, sorry. I need to change. Where is it? It's the button. Oh, you know what? It's my Zoom thing is blocking it. Sorry. Move Zoom. Get out of the way. The button is somewhere up here. Content settings. Okay, so instead of read more, we'll say learn more. Mm-hmm. And let's do one more thing before I leave this page. So right now, this is going to display this list of 3. But what if you want to see more than the 3? So remember, we have an archive page that shows everything. So if I go back to our library, I'll do another row. I don't have to do this as a row necessarily, but I will, just to keep some. The nice thing about the reason I'm doing these as rows is because when I do as a row, I have a little bit more control over spacing between things. Some people would probably add this into the, you know, right below it, and you can adjust padding on buttons. I'm just doing it just to make my life a little bit easier here. So let me add one more row, single column row, and inside of this, I'm going to have a button. You could use the default WordPress button, but I think I'm going to use the fancy advanced button because I can do some styling to it later. In this case, I'm going to say see all pets. And when I do that, the settings here, so where do I want this thing to go to? The button link URL, I think this is the right spot. I want it to go to /pets/. So that's going to say, when you do something like that, that's a relative path. That means it's going to take whatever your website URL is and put this at the end of it. So I'm going to have it go to /pets. You know what? That was the wrong place to put it. I always do that. That's the right place to put it. Never mind. Actually, that's fine. That can stay up there too. All right. So let me just quick update and we'll see what this page now looks like. It's not a lot of styling to it. The button colors probably look pretty ugly still, but this is what we have so far. Yeah. Not bad. You know, for one block. So we have Avis, Banks, Buddy, learn more. I'll show these maybe in a second because that's where Peter's going to pick up, I think. If you click see all pets, it brings us to the archive page. Not bad. Go back here. Let me pick, actually, no, you're going to show that, right, Peter?
What's that?
Your section is going to show the custom fields. So you're going to show
put the custom fields in. Yeah. Okay.
So you're going to show also the custom post type layout as well too. I forgot which one of this is doing that.
Yeah, no, you're all set.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you're all set. And
so this is where I'm going to stop sharing. So this is, I've left it now in terms of, so now when you click on one of these, now what we want to see is we want to see a layout. We want to see some custom fields showing there. So I'm going to stop sharing and then Peter can pick it up.
Yeah. All righty. So we have a few more things to show here. We'll try to do this real fast, but okay. So displaying custom fields. How to display custom fields in a custom post type post. Because right now, what we show, we've already showed the fact that it's still just the title and the, oh, and Ray, you can work on the image. I'll let you close out by putting the image in if you want.
Okay.
So how do you display custom fields? You can do it by code. We're not doing a lot of code right now, where you actually go in and you create a template. That's kind of you can get a lot of control over it. A lot of that's changing now with the block editor and all. You could use short codes to drop that, drop content onto a page. That's actually the direction we're going to go in. Full site editing is something that is really, we're on the cusp of where it's going. It was a little premature for us to show a lot of that now. We experimented and we tried to get things to work, but the way full site editing is it really, once you get into a full site editing mode, it's divorcing itself from headers and footer layouts, and also it wasn't practical for what we want to do, but I know that it is coming, and the theme developers are going to work well with WordPress core and how that's going to work. In a lot of cases, something I was used to are the theme customizers of premium plugins, where you can go in and you put dynamic content and all. Like, we're using Cadence. The Cadence premium version allows you to do a lot of this type of stuff, where you're just dropping in a block with dynamic content. But we're going free version, so we don't have that. So what we're using the short codes. And we're using reusable blocks, or a reusable block, and it'll make sense once we get in there. And so this is kind of a neat way to revisit the value of reusable blocks. You know, as we've shown briefly in the past, a reusable block can be a group of blocks of different types, whether it's core, generate blocks, which is something we've used, cadence blocks now. The dynamic data is using short codes, and the advanced custom fields, the format, the short codes you see in those square brackets. An example would be ACF field equals breed. We added that breed custom field, so you'll see all those. That the reusable block has the same layout wherever it's placed. It is and by the way, the whole thing about if you edit a reusable block in one place, it's going to be universally changing it wherever that reusable block exists, but it does give you consistency of that design. However, the layout is not built into a template using a reusable block. That's when you get into using the theme builders that come in premium tools, or when you get into, you know, working with a PHP file as a page or post, custom post template. But for what we're doing now, it works. And once you build that reusable block, dropping it in is really, we found it to be kind of a nice compromise, if you will, but it works really well. So just taking the same picture, now the custom fields are now going to be in a reusable block. This is basically what we're going to be building, that has in a container. We're going to put headline, post title. Well, we might not put these in, but we're definitely going to have a table of the data. So I'm going to jump right into just that, and we'll try to do this, you know, pretty quickly.
So Peter, the one thing I did while you were going through that info is I went in and went into the the configuration for Cadence, and
Yep.
the layout, and that's where I changed it to show featured image. So I don't know if you wanted to show that to people, how that magically happened.
Yeah. So you went into.
I went to customize. So while he was doing this, one of the things is by default, because Cadence thought that our pets are just a post, a regular blog post, it wouldn't have showed the featured image. So what I did is Cadence has, and again, this is just the Cadence theme, has this custom post types option in the customizer, which is really nice. And here, the pets layout, that's a single page of a pet. The one thing I changed in here while Peter was showing his slides is I turned on set show featured image, and you can turn that off. So by default, this is what it looked like. So it looked kind of junky. Like I wanted that pet image in there. So by turning it on, boom. So again, we haven't styled this page. You can actually do a lot with this free free layout that Cadence gives you.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And this is not a total replacement for doing like a page template or full site editing, but it's pretty good for what you get.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're going to work on my buddy Binks here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this out within one post, and then we'll save it as a reusable block that we can use on the other post. So it still has the fields down here that we entered, and if we change anything, it would change what we're doing up top. But just to show you real quick, what let me call this up. The custom fields that we're going to use. I'm just going to do this real quick this should work just by pasting these in. And what I've done here is this is the short code, and the short code is specific to advanced custom fields, just to show you an advanced custom field documentation page, displaying values in your theme if you were getting into code. This is the stuff we're not getting into showing you because it gets pretty complicated. But the short code is, and while this is showing it as a variable, if we put the field name in, this is how short codes work specific to advanced custom fields. So I could actually, if I preview this right now, I should be able to see that's the output. So technically this could be a page, but we're going to make it a little bit nicer. We're gonna fancy it up. But these short codes are exactly what it's outputting each one of the fields. So what I did when I first played with this is I went in here and I created I used the container block, which is we had already loaded generate blocks in the container block, and in that container block, what I did was I just gave it a simple background color, and then within that I added, and this is actually a WordPress core block called table, and I'm going to add that, and I need, well, I can count 1, 2, 3, and I think I left fee out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to say 7, and we can always adjust it if we got it wrong. So I'm going to have 7 rows with 2 columns. I'm going to create this table, and this table now it's a block. It's got nothing in it, and I can come in here and I can just grab. I'm just going to grab this text. So I could probably type it faster. And I'm going to do, breed. Now, one of the things I often do, like, you kind of do this and then you go in and edit. So I'm just putting in the short codes, and now I'm going to put in age, color, size. I'm just putting in the same size. Now we've got an interesting field, that pet info field. Date available.
Do you want the underscore for pet info?
Yeah, thank you. Because that is, I can show you back on the list, but that's that slug field name. Date available. And what did we call that? Did we call it adoption?
Is it fee or something? I don't remember. Oh, I can. Why don't you start filling those in? I'll find out the name while you're doing it.
Okay. I'll just put in the words adoption fee. Available.
It was a adoption underscore fee.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only one I abbreviated was the size, because it's a size when grown. Grown and pet info. So now I have this table. I'm just gonna take a chance, update it. I have this table. Let's view. And now there you go. Now we have a table sitting in this container that has those fields. I'm going to get rid of it. So I'm kind of just building it. I'm putting these short codes in this table. Let me get rid of all of this because I don't need it. I copy that over. All right. I'm going to add a field, and we'll keep it simple to start. I'm going to just say details of this pet, and I'll show you. We can play with variables on this. Just playing with the blocks. I'm going to put that above the table. One other thing I can do with the table is I can change the background color. And this is one of those funky things, by the way, Ray, when I was doing this, the background color wouldn't stick when I edited this. And the thing to keep in mind, again, is that reusable blocks, which we're about to make, change it one place, you're changing it everywhere. So now, if I take a look at this, well, I'll do it as a preview. And there we go. Right. So here's the details. Pretty simple. We can jazz it up, but guess what? It's only on Binks right now. So if I go to the home page, go to one of our other buddies here, go to Avis. Avis doesn't have that. Well, what do we do about that? Let's come back here to Binks. I do that a lot. I go to edit the page. So let's go here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab basically, well, everything, but since the container, I'm going to make the container and everything in it, I'm going to make that a add to reusable blocks. Right. So now once I do that, I'm going to call this pet detail. Call it what you want, with something that makes sense. And now I've got that reusable block is created. Okay. When you create a reusable block and you have it on the page, one of the things you're gonna note is when you go to save something, it's going to say, oh, now we've got new things. Like, are you saving the pet detail reusable block, both? And interestingly enough, a lot of times you have to go and see how the color went away. This is this weird little thing, and I don't really. But I'm changing the background color of that. I'm going to update this now. I'm going to save it. Now let's go to all our pets. And let's go to Avis. We're going to edit Avis. I'm going to come down to Avis's content. I put in some data there for Avis. And now I'm going to add a block. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, I now have a new reusable block that I just created called pet detail. Gives me a quick little view of it. I didn't save the background color. That's okay. We'll have to figure that one out. Well, let's try to do the one more time, and then I will drop that particular thing. Every once in a while, it runs a little quirk like this. Save.
I never even tried this table block before.
Yeah,
I didn't know it existed.
yeah, exactly. So now when I go this, now if I view Avis, now Avis has, see how, but this detail here is what was put into those fields. And let me change one thing real quick too. So now I'm looking at it, size of room 14. It doesn't make sense because I didn't put the details there. The pet info, each one of those check boxes, it's now a comma delimited list, if you will. There could be ways that you could change that, but this is the default and how it edits. Let me just really quickly, in the adoption tree, I'm going to do one quick thing here. I'm going to go to that reusable block. I can edit it here. And now I'm going to say size when grown, let's put pounds after that. An adoption fee, I'm going to sneak in $sign before that because I'm darn stubborn. I'm going to, by the way, this is all that how you can manage that. Go to block.
And what,
Oh, color.
maybe just to explain that a little bit, because I think it may seem like magic to people what you're doing there, but basically the way, and we haven't covered short codes before, because short codes, I don't know how interesting it is to cover anymore these days, but I mean, what a short code is really doing behind the scenes is some code is running, so
Yeah.
short code is running some code that basically returns back something. In this case, it's returning back the value of that adoption fee, for example. And in that field, Peter had defined it as, I think he defined it as a numeric or something.
Yes.
But it basically, from a website standpoint, it's just text.
Yeah.
So he's able to do all those formatting things, like put a $sign. It doesn't break the short code at all. The short code's within those brackets.
Within the brackets.
Yeah.
100. Yep. Exactly. Yep. And now we'll just go. Yeah.
So Peter.
Yeah.
So I've kind of lost track. You're moving fast, which is fine. It's interesting. The short code is, can you get some of that information? Is there like a little library of short codes, or is this something you had to learn?
So short codes are dependent on the, in this case, the plugin itself. This was, again, we're using Advanced Custom Fields. And Advanced Custom Fields has built into it this short code.
And there was that documentation page he was showing, that's where they show you like what all their short codes are.
Okay, so there is a source.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's specific to in this particular case, that this plugin, and in this plugin actually has a whole bunch of other short codes. A lot of these are for the pro version. But this is the main one that we're looking at, and when you get certain details. But so we're literally taking the most simple short code that Advanced Custom Fields has, which is ACF, that triggers the code that says this short code is coming from ACF specific to, other most plugins don't have short codes.
Okay.
It's specific to Advanced Custom Fields. This is the formatting.
And I think their pro version has a block, actually.
Yeah.
They want you to
so you wouldn't
even. You don't need shortcodes. A pro, you can drop an ACF block in and do all this configuration, which they want you to buy the pro version. But.
Right. So Sunny will come here real quick. I'm going to. So we'll do browse all, because that's where my reusable block is. Pet detail, update. So I wonder if that's what I can do here, is not save the reusable block because it's coming in and losing the color. And if I save it now and unsave that, I betcha. Yep. So Ray, what do you think? Did we get, I know we lightning round through.
Yeah. So I think the thing to reemphasize here, and Peter said this when he started talking about this, is this is not the ideal way, I think, to necessarily kind of do what we're doing. So what I mean by that is, ideally, and we'll probably cover this in the future, once full site editing becomes available and more mature in WordPress. The idea behind full site editing is kind of a complex topic, but the concept behind it is you'll have the ability in one place to create a template that you can apply to all of our pet pages. So, again, I used to be a software developer. One of the kind of key concepts is don't repeat yourself. They call it the dry principle. And the idea behind it applies to a lot of things in software development, but the thought is you want to go to one place to change something. You don't want to go to 50 places to change it. What we've done here, what Peter just showed, it's kind of a compromise. He's created this set of reusable blocks. So that's good. We have one set of reusable blocks, but the problem is we're kind of copying and pasting it into every single pet. So back to our original tenet of this, if I'm an administrator of these pets, we're going to have to give them instructions right now to say, oh, you want to add another cat? Go ahead, fill in the fields, but oh, by the way, you've got to cut and paste the reusable block. It's not ideal. So long-term full site editing really would allow us to separate that out into a template that we the WordPress developers can define so that it shows up wherever we want it to show up on a pet page. We're not quite there yet. And like I said, just for the reasons of simplicity, that's its own whole topic, 2-hour topic of full site editing. So hopefully if people at least can kind of see the value, and we haven't really touched on reusable blocks before, you can see the power of that. I mean, being able to create a group like Peter created, you can use it with ACF, you can use it with other things too. It doesn't have to be just ACF.
Right.
So
yeah, and this idea that, if I were to now change something in this table, everywhere I've placed that reusable block, it would change. And, in this particular case, if we were giving this to somebody, it would be, your workflow would be go in, edit add all the details, but instead of typing it in or messing this up, then it'd be like include that reusable block, and then everything you fill in here, and that's why I'm showing these side by side, automatically goes into its spaces, because on the back end it's shortcode, on the front end it's the actual output of those fields.
right.
It's pretty neat. I mean, this was we're both kind of like this compromise.
Well, if you saw the way when we first announced the meetup, sometimes we do these things by the seat of our pants. So we said, all right, we're going to do this, but let's see how it's actually going to work. And it works. Like I said, I think at some point, well, the nice thing about what we're doing with this project too is we have the ability to revisit these things as new solutions come along, and as WordPress 5.9 or 5. Whatever makes it easier to do full site editing. We can certainly go back and revisit this and say, let's clean it up now. And I think that's a normal thing in software development, the idea of like refactoring your code to make things cleaner, faster, et cetera, et cetera. So this works. And if you, Peter, can you go back to the homepage again?
Yep.
So if you think about where we started, we basically have what we wanted. So we have a section in here, and you can keep sharing, Peter, if we do the wrap up. So now, it's looking a bit better. So now we have our, make a difference. We've got our featured adoptable pets, and I just picked 3 just to kind of keep with the 3 columns up above us. We've got our learn more buttons, see all, so we can do more styling to that button to make it look a little bit better. The other thing I didn't show so much is back to our taxonomy thing. You don't see that in action, but if you're playing along with this on your own, you can filter what we display on the homepage. So let's say we had a section for featured cats or featured dogs. In that block that I was using from Cadence, one of the options is I can filter and say only include cats in this one block, and then only include dogs. Or there's a lot of other customization that we could do, based on taxonomy. So taxonomy wasn't just for us in the back end; it actually can be used by your theme or plugins, etc. Yeah, I think you have to click on that.
So question for you guys. Thinking about this theme as adopting pets, is there a way to use a custom field that says, I'll just say no longer available because the pet was adopted? And by doing so, is there a place to place a rule so that pet no longer shows up?
Yeah, that would be so in that case, adoption, I think, would be something like a tag, for example. So from the taxonomy, I didn't create that kind of a taxonomy, but that would be a tag to say available or
I mean,
available or not.
There's multiple ways of doing it. I was playing with one of the field types. Brad, you're currently editing the.
I just got out of it. If you want to refresh.
Okay. One of the field types, if you were to add a new field, you could say available, and you could make this, for example, a true false, and then call it, basically yes, no, and with a checkbox if it becomes not available.
I don't know if the Cadence block would read that custom field for the filtering, the one that I just showed. It definitely, so this would take a little bit more. Ideally you'd want that as a custom field or something, but you can use the tags is probably a quick way to do that.
I was gonna, exactly. That the reason that you might not want to do it is the very reason, like we could show it, but all the filtering without using like a premium tool or whatever relies on what that front page block can do. And if it can't filter by that, you're right. But once you get into custom fields and you start like experimenting with some of these tools, I use something called Toolset, and the filtering and the searching and the view, it just gets to a level of like absolute granular control. So it does, there is some limitations depending on what tools we're using. Any other questions while we're wrapping up here?
I mean, hopefully, again, whether you use this or not on your own site, you've probably run into custom fields and custom post types, almost certainly if you're using a plugin, any of the popular plugins. So I'm hoping that at least you're kind of seeing that there's not really magic behind, what this thing does. And I hope you're also looking at the possibilities of your own site. I mean, this is one of those things, back to that refactoring idea of, as I said, I've built some sites in the past where, once you start seeing yourself repeating something, or you're like, oh, I've got to go back to this thing and change it and change it and change it. Sometimes, think about yourself or the next person who's got to maintain the site. That's really where I think the power of custom fields and custom post types comes in. It makes the administration of something a lot simpler, because now, the person maintaining pets, they don't have to know how to create a web page or how to use Cadence, whatever, ideally, once we get the template thing done. They're just going in and adding pets or adding products or adding whatever. So that's one of the big powers of these. It's that separation of the structure of the thing from the actual coding part of it. So what's next on our project? So this is a big one. So this took a little while. Our possible ideas, because this is still fluid. We have a couple more things to do on the homepage itself to just kind of finish that page off. I was throwing out there, and maybe the group can, give some feedback on this, is, okay, if we're going with this pet theme, now we're going to want to allow people to either contact us if they want to adopt one of those pets, or go through the full-blown donation. So donations would be separate. I guess donations would really just be donate to the pet shelter itself, or we can start doing something like a contact form, and really dive a little bit deeper into contact forms. Just there's a lot into that as well too. So we'd have to create a contact form, style it. So one of those will be our next topic, I think, as well as finishing up the homepage. So if you have a preference for one or the other, the donations one will involve a little bit of, I guess, a touch of e-commerce, kind of simple e-commerce, I would say, like connecting it to something like PayPal. We could show maybe just, that to me is a highly specialized contact form.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and we can present different options, whether it's a third-party tool or a PayPal. Give WP is great. I have not used the free version, but maybe it can help out. So. Yeah, but yeah, it would be great to get some people giving them some ideas of what they would like to see.
So
vote add functionality, says
add function, yeah. Well, and that's our goal of this. I think once we're done with this, as I said, we want a mediumly complex website that does what it does. It should function for an animal shelter. And as we wrap things up too, we'll talk about how to share that with people, and you could take it, continue to evolve it and stuff. I think, again, there's nothing in this that we put in that's, everything should be open source, open, photography, things like that. So, So again, thanks everyone for joining us for tonight. As I said, we send out links to the our YouTube channel, where I'll post a video of tonight's recording presentation on there. I'll send out links as well too of where you can find the slides, where you can find our past presentation slides, and definitely join our Facebook group or contact us through Meetup if you're not into Facebook, which I can understand. We're always looking for ideas. So again, this project, if you have things that you're like, hey, I'd like to see you guys, try this or add this feature or that feature, that'd be a great thing too. We're looking for some direction too on how to build the rest of this out. Or if you have questions that from things that we covered tonight or other things we didn't get a chance to cover, feel free to reach out to us there as well too. So someone asked, have we done something on child themes? We did a while ago. Yeah. So that was, unfortunately, that one wasn't recorded. That's back when we used to actually meet face to face back in the day.
That was the beginning of time, man.
Yeah. Child themes is a funny one too, that even what we're doing here, Peter and I talked about this in the very beginning of this project. so far, and especially the way that themes themselves are changing and the customizer is changing and the block editor, we may reach a point in this project where we need a child theme, but we didn't want to start with a child theme. Like
Right.
we haven't touched a single line of CSS yet. There's no additional CSS added yet. There may be in the future. And again, if you're taking this for a real project, you may have started with a child theme to begin with, but we don't want to just throw that complexity into the mix just from the get-go. So thanks everyone for joining. Thanks. So I hope you come back for our next one, and everyone have a good night.
All right.
Take
Good night.
care.
Thank you.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Take care.
Good night,
Bye.
take care.
Thank you.